Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and honor to be here. Today I will be speaking about Belarus, but also Russia, and I think the topic we are discussing now, it will show also important insights not only on the Belarusian situation, but also neighboring countries, including post-Soviet states such as Moldova, Armenia, Baltic countries. So, if you have any questions or any comments, even during the presentation, please don't hesitate to disagree. I will be giving a lot of slides, a lot of pictures, a lot of numbers today, so it will be pretty intense. I combined in this lecture findings from my several research. Some insights will be shown, presented for the first time. They were never presented before, and I hope that I will be able to answer this difficult question, could Belarus be the next? But you all know that Putin and Kremlin's behavior is unpredictable. So the first, I will start with some background facts on Belarus. I will not give you some basic information, but I will show you how Russia increased its presence. So it started with the election of Alexander Lukashenko as a president, and in 1996 he started integration with President Yeltsin at that time, and he created a Russian-Belarusian Union. So this honeymoon between Lukashenko and Yeltsin was between 96 and 2000. Later this process was slowed down, but still Belarus exists in Russian cultural and information space. As you know, that Belarus is the member of the Collective Security Treaty, which was created as alternative as opposition to NATO bloc, and the member of Eurasian Economic Union, which keeps us stronger, maybe even stronger than Russian ideology or media. Russification. Belarus was the most Russified state in Soviet Union. It was more Russified than Ukraine, than all Caucasus states. All intelligentsia was destroyed, killed during Stalin repression in 37-38. So for us it was very difficult to revive Belarus national identity, Belarus language, in the beginning of 90s. And today, as I think the biggest problem is that education in schools are in Russian language. So 86% of pupils in secondary schools are taught in Russian. And as you know, Lukashenko's ideology is pan-Slavic. He always believed in Slavic brotherhood. And probably it was connected with his idea, with his desire to be the president of Russian-Belarusian Union. After he understood, after Putin came to power, he realized he will not be such president. Never. He changed his narrative, he changed his attitude, so now he's trying to balance and to mention more often the word independence. So there are two narratives. In Belarus, I tried to combine them kind of mosaic here. The Western nationalist Belarusian narrative and Lukashenko's Soviet pro-Russian status quo. These narratives are competing, and until recent time they never crossed. They are very, very different, very polarized. They are existent in all spaces. We have civil society also divided. We have two unions of poets, two unions of artists, two unions of journalists. One of them are belonging to the Western narrative, one of them belonging to this Soviet-Russian narrative. Here I added, what the Western narrative is. You should understand that Belarusian example is unique because the nationalist narrative is inbuilt in Western pro-European narrative. Belarusian nationalists, compared, like in opposite to many other European states, they are very pro-European, they are very pro-democratic. And at the same time, more leftist, pro-Russian, Soviet, they go together. So here we have the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Rzeczpospolita heritage as the basis for this narrative. Here we have the traditional culture, Belarus language, vyshivankas, and all the movement, Belarusian People's Republic announcement in 1918, protest since 1994 when Lukashenko was elected. That's everything which goes together in people's mind and in minds of the Russian ideologists as well. That's why they created their own narrative, which is, let's say, which gives some cracks recently, because we see that Lukashenko is not so dependent, but also he's not totally independent from Russia. But Lukashenko's narrative was to recreate the beauty of the Belarus Soviet past. So he appealed to Belarusian history as the as the creator of the Soviet, of the USSR, that Belarus independence started with the liberation of Belarus territory and Western Belarus by Soviet troops in '44, and he changed, for example, the day of independence to the July 3rd, when Belarus was liberated. So for him, that's the start of the history. And all the story built around the war, around the Soviet past, and recently around the Russian Empire historical figures. So what are four major instruments of Russian presence in Belarus? And now we are going to the reality, to the present time. Media, civil society, which is not civil society in reality, but organizations, movements, which pretend to be civil society, church and think tanks. And I will describe in today's presentation each of these elements, how it works, is it efficient or not, and give some numbers. But first of all, I will show what are goals, what narrative, what stories, what constitute a story Russian organizations create in Belarus. First of all, they want to preserve status quo. They are interested in saving Lukashenko as the neutral, more or less pro-Russian, more or less pro-Soviet figure. They also want to keep political control over political elite. I had another research about Belarusian ministers and vice ministers. Many of them, after finishing their career in Belarus government, left to Russia and worked in Russian organization, Russian government institute, Союзное государство, Russian Belarusian Union. Second, they try to ensure dominance of Russian information and cultural space. That's why so many programs promoting Russian language, history, common past, Russian Empire, Ekaterina Великая, Peter I, etc. Third, neutralizing pro-Western and pro-Ukrainian messages. When I say pro-Western, it doesn't mean only Brussels or Washington. It's very often Polish, and I will show you some examples because there is a huge network of anti-Polish media initiatives. Fourth, it's discrediting Belarusian national identity and statehood. And that's very important, and I think that's the most destroying for Belarus' democratic future potentially. I created a map which shows the main points of Russian influence, and I will explain you what these small signs mean on this map. First of all, to let you understand that it's everywhere. I know that you know very little maybe about current Belarus situation, as 99% of Belarusians, but what we have here? We have here a huge amount of small initiatives of different character working all the time and synchronized. And the thing which unites all of them, they are financed by Kremlin. So, so you can see military bases here. Let me go closer. So, first of all, two military bases created in the 90s and 2000s. Both of them are strategically important for Russians. That's why I keep so strong, Russia in the sphere of influence of Belarus in the sphere of influence of Russia. One, it is air defense, which belongs to cosmic army, cosmic войска, cosmic troops of Russia. This radio location base which prevent the rocket attacks. So for example, if the potential war will start between the West and the East, and the rocket will be targeting Moscow, this base is the most Western for Russians, which prevent this attack and which led the air defense system to stop this missile attack. And the second, it's Uzel Sviazi. It's like the unit of the communication, which connects all the military nuclear submarines in the northern seas, all of them. And if, for example, Putin, let's say, will go to communicate, will go there, we'll need to give order, to the most western and most northern submarines and ships. It will go through this station. Of course, these both stations are very closed and not open for public. So we Belarusians, we even don't know how many will work there. Another idea appeared 2 years ago. Russians wanted to create air base in Belarus and to place there from 10 to 20 airplanes, warplanes, but it did not happen. Partly because of the civil protest, partly because of Lukashenko's fear, that the Ukrainian scenario could happen. We also have here, this small sign which shows some organizations, some movements, some initiatives. Most of them are cultural, formally, cultural or scientific, but we all know what does it mean. These small signs, with Kalashnikov, a small guy, I try to show the presence of Cossacks group. I will stop separately on Cossacks, but I think most of you know the main story. Cossacks, Russian Cossacks, they were fighting against Grand Duchy of Lithuania, Rzeczpospolita, and the main idea of Cossacks today is to protect Orthodox beliefs, Orthodox religion, and pan-Slavic idea. Here we see the sign www, the placement of the regional media initiatives, websites or groups in social networks, Одноклассники or Kontakte. These buildings, why? It's a Russian Cultural and Science Center. 3 of them are existing in Belarus. I think that's the most around in all neighbor countries. They are directly paid by Russian embassy and the federal Russian government. And we also see that's university centers. Russian university centers that create, the Russian programs that support, talented students writing about the pan-Slavic unity, importance of Russian Belarus culture. So, to summarize, the present. So we have 2 military bases, 2 Russian centers of science and culture, 4 major TV stations in so-called, social package that everyone has at their own homes. We have more than 200 pro-Russian groups on social networks. I counted only those who have more than 1,000 followers, because we have more than 1,000 groups with less amount of followers. So we have 70 plus registered pro-Russian NGO. Formally they are not pro-Russian, but we can just analyze their names. I will show you later. 10 pro-Russian think tanks, which seems not to be very popular, influential now, but the trend is not in favor of the Western or pro-democratic ones. And the organizations of Cossacks. So Cossacks are chosen as the main element of the social mobilization. And in case if Belarus will be the next, as we pose the question today, Cossacks group could be this element for this intervention and the local support for the intervention. So let's start with pro-Russian organization and initiatives. I know that this information are obvious, but Russians are very, very active in supporting pro-Russian organization worldwide, even here in the United States of America. And 2 major funds which are giving this support to this organization are Россотрудничество, it's like Russian cooperation, and Gorchakov Fund. Gorchakov Fund is primarily public diplomacy fund. It's like a soft power fund. And both of them supposed to be copies of Western institution. Россотрудничество was supposed to be like copy of USAID, Democratic Programs Fund, and National Endowment for Democracy. They do in the same way. They giving grants in the same way. They even have deadline systems very similar. So if you go to their websites, you will find the same pattern. But the main difference is the goal. When here we have promotion of democracy, here we have promotion of anti-democracy, of totalitarianism and Russian imperialism. So Россотрудничество is sponsoring these main Russian cultural centers, which in reality they monitor situation and they participate in distributing these grants. Garchakov Fund, they are working very, very efficiently with think tanks, with the websites writing about politics, about Russia and Belarus, about Lukashenko's moves. But they are very loyal to Lukashenko because they still believe Lukashenko is his person in Belarus, which is partly, but probably not totally true. And RUMOL is just an example. Rusi Молодая, RUMOL initiative, it's one of the biggest youth organizations in post-Soviet countries. RUMOL, Garchakov Fund sponsored their initiatives. And RUMOL, it's kind of, I don't know if it has the analog in the United States, but the idea is to create the movement of pro-Russian experts which are working worldwide. Rusi Mir Foundation. So you all know the concept of Rusi Mir, but also there is a Rusi Mir Foundation which was created much earlier, much before Crimea happened. When Gorchakov Fund and Rossотрудничество, they rised and became so important after 2014, Rusi Mir exists since 2006 or 7. And Rusi Mir, formally, it's a very cultural organization, so supporting, giving also grants, language, culture, Pushkin, Dostoevsky, all the symbols of the Russian success and power. So in Belarus, what they do, some examples. Russian Center and Brest University, they opened just last month. School and youth competition, one of them just finished yesterday. Award for preserving Belarusian language, Russian language. For students, companies, businesses that are working on preserving Russian, or newspapers which refused to change or to use Belarusian language in their publications, they get money awards from this Rusi Mir Fund. Use of Europe for peace, they often play, with this Europe, democracy is like a pan-Slavic unity. They play with Western terms in favor of their interest. And cinema festivals, usually about war, festival of Slavic films. The recent big festival was We Won Together. It was the whole bunch of movies from post-Soviet space made about the great victory of the Red Army in Second World War. And the map where similar initiatives exist, it's everywhere in Europe. So it's not unique for Belarus, but in Belarus they had much better condition, for development, and people are much more vulnerable to this influence. Rossотрудничество in Belarus, they have 8 directions of work. I just put them here. Compatriots, culture and art, education and science, safe Russian language, public diplomacy, significant and memorable dates, partner of the Russian Federation. So if you look at these 8 points, you will see that that's exactly what Russian Empire were doing in the 19th century, when so-called colonization was happening, in this in Eastern Europe, when Russia occupied the Eastern Europe. And these technologies, the strategies of 19th century, they worked perfectly. So they just put into the modern package, and they do the same. Through the culture, through the school, through the education, through the working with vulnerable groups, through militarization, they mobilize people in support of their ideas. So compatriots, that's initiative to support these organizations, which work with those who believe they are Russians, those who speak Russians, and with those who dislike West. So it's not necessary for you to be the Russian citizen, to be the part of these compatriots. The only thing you should declare, you share their values and ideas. And some examples of initiatives. Open discussion in the university, family, tradition, values. Because you understand the West, it's like the chaos, liberalism, pedophiles everywhere. And values, traditions should be connected with Russia. Meeting of compatriot, it happens almost every month. Please welcome. Okay. Meeting of compatriots in cultural center. Poems about war. It's a competition for schools, for the youth, and they give the prizes and bring the most talented students to Russia. Dusha slova malitvy ищет. A competition for Russian writing authors. They purposefully, they divide, they emphasize Russian writing, Russian speaking population. So it was very similar situation in Donbass, but yeah, it's not topic for today, but you will find similarities. 8 Ziskar Summer University for PhD students. So they bring talented students of international relations, culture, philology, philosophy to Russia. Global Challenges Conference, Summer Russian Immersion in Russia. It's like a conference for talented youth and experts. So in 2017 there was at least 25 big projects in Belarus for children and youth. And I just choose some of them. In Minsk, the Forum of Youth of Young Leaders of the Union State. It's Russian-Belarus Union State. So the day of Union of Belarus and Russia in Mahilov. So the children were making pictures, how cool we are together. Cosmos, that's we. Cosmos means we. It's about Gagarin, about the Soviet, expansion in the space program. Belarus joined the International Flash Bomb. Thank you, Stalingrad. It's towards war, and also this cultivation of Stalin. I think it's also a remarkable change, because there was not so many Stalin before the last 3 years, and Stalin ideally fits into Russian Orthodox Church too. That's also, for me, it's kind of absolutely, they're not going together in any way, except in Russia ideological paradigm. Let's read Pushkin. We Speak Russian International Festival. So all of this, it's like emphasizing on Russian culture, literature, but as a whole, if we look at the picture, it's about Pan-Slavism and Russian imperialism. Some names of organizations working in the field. There are much more of them. I just give you the name to understand how they, what do they appeal for. National Bolshevik Party. It still exists. It still exists in Belarus, and unfortunately it has supporters, especially in eastern regions. Group Anti-Maidan. After Ukraine 2014, a lot of small branches of Anti-Maidan appeared, emerged in Belarus. Западная Rus, Cultural Educational Initiative. Organization Avant-Garde. That's leftists, young leftists who joined, this pro-Russian campaign. International Russia, Orthodox Patriotic Club, Slavic March, Alley of Russian Fame, Rumol, Brotherhood of Davmon Pskovsky, a club heritage. You see, the pattern is pretty clear. So let's say this Orthodox Patriotic Club, yeah. For many of them, the word Orthodox and Russian go together. So sometimes they mention Orthodox, they mean Russian. When they speak Russian, they mean Orthodox. And I think that also came from the historical, from the history of the beginning of 20th century, when, for example, in Belarus, when you were Orthodox, you always believed as a Russian, But the same thing was also with Catholics. When you say Catholic, it means Polish. So this blurred Belarus national identity, because we did not have our own church. In 19th century, before a Greek Catholic church was forbidden, it was easier, because Greek Catholic was meaning Belarus. But after a Greek Catholic was destroyed almost, so this separation was used by Russians to polarize the society. So, you're not Orthodox, so you mean you're Polish. So they use it, and I will show examples in media. Conference of Compatriots and the Nikolay Starikov meeting in Minsk. Nikolay Starikov is one of the ideologists of Rusi Mir. He came, and Belarusian youth organizations from all the front, they organized the protest against him. They stand up from seats in this hall, and they started to shout, "Чемодан вокзал Россия." It's like suitcase, train station, Russia. And it was very funny. but I think it was very important for regular, ordinary Belarusians to feel that it's not something usual, it's not something ordinary for Russian Rusi Mir ideologists to perform, to speak in a downtown of Minsk. Paramilitary initiatives. That's very worried because the quantity of them are growing and security services in Belarus do not do much to stop, to prevent them. So Cossacks organization, airsoft clubs, historical reconstruction clubs, cadet schools, military classes and camps. So like 4 sources where we can look for these pro-Russian initiatives. Cossacks are the most important. They call them Belarusian Cossacks, but we never had Belarusian Cossacks in the history. So Belarusian Cossacks is also invention of this Russian imperialistic ideology. You remember, you know, this Taras Bulba, I think, all the story of. So that's what they address for. You know, if you want to be Cossack, I mean, you know, Cossacks. I will explain, you know, in a very basic term for those who are not Polish, let's say, who don't know very well. So Cossacks it's like a pirates, you know, historical pirates in the Russian Empire, who are not totally part of the system, but who were hired by the system, by governments, you know, by empire, you know, to serve, to defend, to protect, to destroy, to attack. So they are like mercenaries in most cases. And similar situation, you know, happens now in Belarus. They're kind of mercenaries for Russia in Belarus. And unfortunately, military children camps. It's a kind of cooperation between Orthodox Church and Cossacks groups. So they invite children for free for 2 or 3 weeks in summertime to the forest, you know, to sleep in the tents. And in the morning they start with, maybe I will have some. No, I have not. So they start with some, you know, praying, mass of the Orthodox priest. Later they start military training, fire training, you know, some physical training. And if your child, like 15 years old, will spend like the months, half months in this camp, it could definitely, you know, form very distorted perception of the reality. So that's about Cossacks. You know, they cooperate with the Russian regular army, so they get uniform, for example, from them, some technology to train with. So they cooperate with this Spetsnaz, 45th Guards of Independent Spetsnaz Brigade, which was taking part in the Caucasus Wars, occupation of Crimea, Georgian War, and yeah, their belief is one Orthodox Church, which is like written in their statutes, which are like copied from organization to organization, and yeah, and just some examples of names. You know, International Public Association, the Soldiers of Cossacks Guard, Descendants of Russian Cossacks, Belarusian Cossacks. You know, all of this, cultivating of the name Cossacks itself, and I counted with colleagues that 50-70 organizations like this exist. Not very big, from 10 to 50 people, but they organize events for much wider groups. So it looks like this. It's a Belarusian photo. It's paramilitary camps. Especially it started after occupation of Crimea, and DNR, LNR experts are coming to teach students, children in these camps. They create a cooperation between schools. For example, that's agreement between the Russian Cadet School and the regular Minsk school, and they forcefully, you know, subscribed all the pupils from the regular Minsk school into cadets for this Russian. So it also has influence. Think tanks. So think tanks appeared, they created a pro-Russian narrative, especially after 2015. A lot of think tanks, or so-called think tanks, Fabriki Mysli, Fabric of Thought, or websites, experts, groups. 2 of them, the most pro-Russian and the most active, Sonar and Eurasia Expert, and some other smaller ones. So what do they do? Attacking national identity, undermining national identity of Belarusians. Statehood was a mistake. Belarusians got their independence by chance. Criticizing the West, attacking in all possible ways, and giving all the news about the terror We have to finish?
No, 3 minutes.
Oh gosh, I just only started. But I think we have 40 minutes.
Excuse me?
40 minutes we have?
Yeah, with questions.
Okay. Sorry.
8 minutes then.
Okay, please. Okay, so I will not be stopping too much on the topics. So it's justifying Lukashenko, attacking Belarusian People's Republic and all elements of national identity, attacking the United States of America, and explaining why Union State of Belarus, Russia could win. The numbers of these are not extraordinarily high, but they are much higher than any independent democratic think tank in Belarus. Eurasia Expert, has 19,000 per month from Belarus, and Sonar 2050, 9,000. Telescope, it's a website which pretends to be an expert, created by Zapadno-Rus, by Western Rus expert Lev Kristapovich, and just example of their publications and conferences. Muravyev-Vilinsky, about the brave Muravyev, who attacked and destroyed the Western identity among Belarusians. The Western Belarus, 1939, about Soviets and socialist organizations that are fighting against Poles. Lukashenko and National Idea of Belarus, who explains nobody knows what does it mean, this national identity, because it's always changing. And Belaya Gvardia, Belarusi. Politring, that's another example of this. So let's go to media. So in media we have a very interesting representation, and I think that's the most important. So 4 of 10 the most important popular websites in Belarus are Russian. So Vkontakte, Yandex, Mail.ru, Odnoklassniki.ru. Belarusians live in a Russian media space. 65%, as we counted, could their point of view is created by Russians. Part of them get information from social networks, especially young people. Part of them from TV stations. TV stations, we have NTV, Россия, STS, TV Mir, but most of them are hybrid TV stations. So part of product is produced in Minsk, part of product produced in Russia. Lukashenko's authorities try to block some Solovyov programs, the most propagandist programs, but not totally, because the Russian message is built in films, documentaries, TV shows, not only news. Websites, the most popular are News and News Mail.ru, Yandex.ru. They aggregate only good content. So they ignore Radio Free Europe, Voice of America, all the Western content. Belsat, for example, the Polish project in Belarus is not presented there. Lenta.ru, Sputnik, Telescope, Regnum. So let's go ahead. So that's television distribution. So we see that almost 80% of Belarusian NTV, RTR. NTV, RTR, the most propagandist channel in Belarus. And the European channels like Euronews, Belsat, BBC, they're very marginal. So their influence not really so strong. So weekly audience of Belsat is about 2.5% of population, which is not bad, counting the budget of this organization, but it's not enough to change the perception of the politics and international affairs. So that's a website. We see that Sputnik is growing extremely. 2 years, it grew to 2,600,000 per month visits, and it's growing very fast. At the same time, these websites, Independent Charter 97, Belsat, RFRL, they're growing, but not so strong as Sputnik. Sputnik has Belarusian version. They invite the best journalists. They give good salaries, and they play the role of kind of independent media. They write about opposition too.
Belsat is the one from Poland, right?
Yes, Belsat is from Poland, yeah.
Okay.
Which is also very good. Belsat quality is very high now. They work with BBC now. They try to borrow the content from BBC, but still they lack promotion. Sputnik's banners, billboards are everywhere in Minsk. You will never see advertising of Belsat or RFRL. I will not be stopping at these slides, but I just wanted to show the influence. That's a trust. You see the trust, total trust, partially or total, is much higher to Russian media than, not much, but significantly, higher than to Belarus independent or official media. So that's totally trustful and partially trustful. So how social networks work, I think that's very interesting for me because I think that's the biggest power of Russian propaganda. Vkontakte, it's young people up to 25 years old, they use Vkontakte, almost 90% of them. Older people use Одноклассники, and I will show examples how they work. They have a huge network of groups, Vitebsk против, Адекватный Гомель, Stop Belarusian Nationalists, and some examples. What they do, the message. I'm sorry, yes. 3 minutes, yes. Anti-opposition, let's say. 3 things you can watch, without limit. How water, fire, and how police is beating opposition. The difference is clear. Lukashenko's in the Russian flag, and the journalist with Belarusian flag. Anti-Ukraine message. There was never genocide as it is in Ukraine, never happened even with Hitler. Or another one, how Ukrainians and Ukrainians are dependent on America. I will not translate this message. That's pretty clear. Historical revisionism. They say that, oh, you are like from Belarus, but you know that Belarus was part of Poland. You mean you're a separatist? So why you're against DNR, LNR, who are also separatists? They try to compare, the wish of Belarus to reunify western and eastern part with DNR, LNR, Donetsk and Lugansk republics. Or, for example, Piotr I, he gave freedom to Estonian, Lithuanian, and Latvians in reality. So please praise him, Latvians. You don't understand how happy he made you. Anti-liberalism. So it's about consequences of one homosexual marriages, religion. If democracy, it means that torturing girls by migrants, meetings against weapons. If it is democracy, then I want to live under regime. It's like trying, if for you it's democracy. Anti-Americanism. The most peaceful nation in the world see at their cemetery the training of the United States to their colleagues. Yes, please.
Earlier you showed this photo of a young boy with an AK-47 in his hands. It's through the paramilitary organization.
Yes.
I wondered, do they have these weapons at home, or do they report to like an arsenal training center? Nobody has weapons like that at home. Here you can have that at home if you wanted to.
You can't have this.
It is everybody.
They just given, and I think
All
it's.
right. I wondered, is there much violent crime there in Belarus?
It's crime.
Like we have here.
Of course, it's crime.
Is it as serious? It's not as serious, I imagine.
Yes, you can't have weapons without special permission in Belarus. Yeah, Maria showed me that we have actually we have to finish.
Well, I'm very sorry.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for I didn't count time. So we have also Orthodox, and my conclusion was that not today. Belarus could be after Ukraine, because there is no strong political party in Belarus. That authorities make efforts to reduce the expansion of pro-Russian initiatives. That media organization significantly shape the opinion, but still there is alternative like Belsat and other channels. That not very favorable views to Russia, not so high as it was in Donbass and Crimea, and not such polarization. Belarus is much more unified country than Ukraine.